Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 88, coming at you from the Valley on this beautiful Thursday evening. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your podcasts and videos on YouTube. What a show we have. We got the UFC Fight Night Vegas 103 to recap and UFC 313 pay-per-view action in Las Vegas this weekend. And what a weekend I had. Hosted my grandma's 80th birthday with all my cousins, aunt, uncle, family. Had about 14 people at my house. Pretty chaotic week, but that's literally what I dreamed of. Moving to Arizona, hosting for the family, putting on a good show. My girlfriend got to meet my family. It was an amazing time. You know, really that's the whole point, to gather the family. That's what I'm trying to do. And yeah, my heart is full. My sports fandom's full. I'm rocking the Angels gear that I got at spring training, ready for baseball season as it kicks into full action. This weekend, going to a spring training game on Sunday. On Saturday, hitting the slopes in Flagstaff as it's been dumping. We finally got snow. It took till the beginning of March for me to be able to go skiing here in the desert. But I am excited. But enough about me. Let's talk MMA. We have some fights that have been announced. We have Jose Aldo, Ayman Zahabi at UFC 315, as well as Navajo Sterling and Ivan Arslan at UFC 315 in Canada. We have Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Vince Morales in that UFC Mexico card on March 29th. And then a short notice booked fight for this weekend. We have Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda at UFC 313. We will break that fight down. We have Randy Brown and Nicholas Dalby, April 26th. That's one hell of a banger. As well as this one, Montel Jackson, Daniel Marcos, May 3rd. Ultimate Fighter alum Ryan Loder taking on Azamat Bakoev, May 3rd. And then Zachary Reese and Dusko Todorovic, May 31st. Elsewhere in the UFC and mixed martial arts, we had Rogerio de Lima with a 1-year suspension due to Anastrozoli. And then Dana White with a major announcement in a partnership with Turkey Alashk. We have the TKO promotion officially in boxing in a multi-year deal for boxing, hopefully changing the landscape where the best talent fights the best talent. That is massive in the boxing world. I'm really intrigued to see how that goes. But let's talk about UFC Fight Night Vegas 103. I went 6-3 in my picks. Overall, we're at 536 wins, 260 losses, 8 no contests or draws. And on the year, 52 wins, 19 losses, 1 no contest or draw. To recap this Fight Night card, I would say there was some solid matchups, some very close decisions. But there was one bright spot in the Nasrat Haparest Esteban Rabovic's fight. Not a lot more to write home about. I'm going to recap it a 4 out of 10. I believe that's what I previewed it at. A good couple fights that we did not break down. 2 finishes. We had Mario Pinto with a round 2 knockout over Austin Lane. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Pinto. And then Sam Patterson with a beautiful round 1 knockout over Danny Barlow. That was one of the fights that I got wrong. But we're going to kick this off in the prelims. We had Ramazan Tamirov with the unanimous decision over Charles Johnson. And this fight was actually one of the better fights on the evening. I was shocked it was the first fight on the card. But Charles was on his back foot for most of the first round, as Ramazan was just a brute force, pushing forward, throwing some big-time shots. And Charles did well trying to avoid those at all costs, but it lost him the round. Charles was able to fire back some counters in round 2, and actually started pressuring Ramazan with some nice kicks and boxing. But Ramazan was still able to land the more better, cleaner, powerful shots. And I think he barely took round 2. And then round 3, Charles had Tamirov tired. Actually had him running away about halfway through round 3. But it was too little too late. Although Ramazan won the first 2 rounds, they were very close, and Charles, in a longer fight, definitely would have taken home the victory. A fight I got wrong. Ramazan Tamirov is going to be a stud, a young, fun talent, but one hell of a scrap in the flyweight division. Brutal loss for the energy. Charles landed 87 total strikes, 66 of them significant. He was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts, but had 1 minute and 18 seconds of control time. And Ramazan landed 59 total strikes, 55 of them significant. He was 1 for 2 in takedown attempts. So now, Ramazan extends his winning streak to 11, 2-0 in the UFC. Ramazan also enters the top 15 at number 13. And Charles ends his 4-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak, but he stays in the top 15, moving down 3 spots to number 15. So where do these gents go next? I would love to see Charles and Bruno Silva. I think that would be fun. While Ramazan could move up against Tim Elliott, who should be returning returning from injury soon. Moving on, we had J.J. Aldrich with the unanimous decision over Andrea Lee. And this fight really played out as expected, a very close tit-for-tat fight. And like I had mentioned in the preview, J.J. was just the fighter coming forward and making it an ugly fight, while Andrea was fighting from range and trying to keep J.J. away at distance. And J.J. even got a takedown late in the fight, or Andrea did, but J.J. was dictating where the fight would go through all 15 minutes. And to have a losing streak like Andrea did, I figured she would go for it more in this fight, but she couldn't get it done. Another loss, big win for J.J. Aldrich. Statistically, Andrea landed 66 total strikes, 53 of them significant. She was 1 for 4 in takedowns, had a submission attempt in 46 seconds of control time. And JJ landed 77 total strikes, 74 of them significant. So about 8 more total, 21 more significant. She had 2 takedowns in 3 attempts and a minute and 20 seconds of control time. So JJ starts a new winning streak. She is 3-2 since 2023. Andrea extends her losing streak to 6. She has not won since November of 2021 against Cynthia Cavillo. And honestly, I would assume Andrea retires here, but I am pretty confident she won't be fighting in the UFC again. And for JJ, give me JJ and Casey O'Neill next. That's the fight to make. And then we had Chepe Maniscal with a unanimous decision over Ricardo Ramos. And this fight wasn't quite as good as I was expecting, because Chepe just absolutely overpowered Ricardo. And Ricardo was just in survival mode throughout the fight. He wasn't able to get his own offense going. He couldn't create space, have those spinning combinations. But Ricardo finally had his luck run out, because he's typically able to find spots, land big shots, and get takedowns at the right moments. And he did not have that going, because Chepe was up in his face with his style the entire 15 minutes. So a real dominant performance by Chepe, and the stats speak to that. Ricardo landed 37 total insignificant strikes. He had 1 takedown in 4 attempts. And Chepe landed 125 total strikes, 85 of them significant. He had 2 takedowns in 5 attempts and 2 minutes and 25 seconds of control time. So Chepe extends his winning streak to 8. He's 5-0 in the UFC. Ricardo starts a new losing streak and is 1-3 since 2023. So what's next? I would love to see an absolute banger. Chepe and Edson Barboza. You have to make that. And for Ricardo, a fight with Jack Jenkins would be fun as well. Moving into the main card, we have Haider Emil with a split decision victory over William Gomez. Another fight I got wrong, although not surprised. In this fight, William was actually able to use his length as expected to keep Haider away from boxing distance and control the fight to start. But then in rounds 2 and 3, Haider just forced the issue, was able to get more combinations off, unload those power shots. But William did make it a scrap. Round 3, Haider finally got a takedown and landed way more shots to put a stamp on it. Big win for Haider as he keeps that 0 and stays undefeated. Statistically, Haider landed 164 total strikes, 115 of them significant. He had 1 takedown in 6 attempts, and 2 minutes and 43 seconds of control time. William landed 116 total, 101 significant, but he was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts and had 1 minute and 2 seconds of control time. So very high output by both men. Hyder about 50 more total strikes. So Hyder stays undefeated. He extends that winning streak to 11, 4-0 in the UFC. William starts a new losing streak and is 3-1 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I would love to see Hyder and Doo-Ho Choi. I think that would be box office. And for William, how about a fight with Andre Fili? That's the one to make. Moving on. The well-deserved fight of the night, as Nasrat Haqparast had a very close split decision victory over Esteban Rabovics. Again, fight of the night, 50 Gs. And man, this was well-deserving of fight of the night. It was a very, very close split decision. Nasrat, for most of the fight, kind of started the dance and was landing the cleaner shots. But midway through round 2, after Nasrat was up a round and a half, Esteban landed a massive knee up the middle, and Nasrat just absolutely ate it. And then round 3, Esteban started paying dividends. Both men were emptying the tank. But at the very end of the fight, Esteban had Nasrat so close to being finished. He was doing this to kind of go dap up Esteban. I mean, he was so close to being finished. Another 10 seconds, he would have been out of there. As he couldn't even walk, he was kind of on stilts. I thought that may have swayed the fight to Esteban with a very close round 2, but it didn't. Both men showcased great cardio going that hard for 15 minutes, and it really brought life into the card. I was a little shocked by the decision. I'm not against it. I very well agree Nasrat won rounds 1 and 2. That was my big underdog of the night. Massive win for Nasrat. Not really a loss of stock for Esteban here either, in my opinion. So, the stats here, crazy. Nasrat landed 135 total and significant strikes with the takedown. He went 1 for 5 in takedown attempts. He had 49 seconds of control time. And Esteban landed 149 total, so 14 more total, and 47 significant strikes, so 12 more significant. So Nasrat extends his winning streak to 5. Esteban ends his 3-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak. I will be very intrigued to see where these two go next. I would love to see Haqparast take on Grant Dawson, and for Esteban, he could fight with Mike Davis. Moving on into the random co-main event, we had Cody Brundage with a round 1 knockout over Julian Marquez, and this was not an easy knockout, although it was in round 1. This fight was action-packed as Julian hopped all over Cody, almost had him out of there early, but somehow Cody, with the way they were just kind of falling on each other, was able to get on top of Julian after some scrambling, and then got Julian rocked and was able to just sit on top of him and pour it on. It seemed with about 15 seconds, Julian would get out of there, but Cody got the finish to avoid the scorecards and see where round 2 would take them with cardio, but another big win for Cody Brundage. Statistically, Cody landed 68 total strikes, 44 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts, had a knockdown and 48 seconds of control time. Julian landed 53 total strikes, 37 of them significant with a submission attempt. So Cody starts a new winning streak. He is 3-1 since 2023. He's been active. And Julian extends his losing streak to 4. He hasn't won since April of 2021. I wouldn't be shocked if Julian's off the roster, but if he stays, a fight with Josh Fremd makes sense. And I would love to see Cody. I actually said on Matchmaker Monday, Cody and Albert Duraev would be a great fight. And then someone pointed out to me, Duraev got cut from the UFC. You know, I had my family over, had a few bevies. Definitely an error on my part. Can't get them all right. So let's come up with a fight for him. Let's see, Cody Brundage, where's he at in the rankings roughly? It didn't seem like there was really a clear path for him. That's why it was hard to pick an opponent. So it's really hard to get him to fight up too high in the rankings, for me personally. But maybe Paul Craig or Andre Petroski, or maybe even, I think he already fought Rodolfo Vieira. Yeah, he did. He lost via arm triangle. Maybe even Edmund Shabazian would make sense. It's really not a clear path. He might have to let the division shake out a little bit, as he's been super active. But then in the main event, we had Manel Kape with a round 3 TKO over Asu Almabayev. Performance of the night, 50 Gs from Manel. And this fight kind of let me down as well. It wasn't as action-packed as I thought it would be. Round 1, both men were pretty measured and patient, but Manel was able to defend the takedowns, and that was the big story here. And he kind of just slowly picked Asu apart early. Asu obviously couldn't get his grappling going. He was trying to hang in there with his striking, but was outclassed in round 2, and then into round 3, he had no answers. Statistically, Manel landed 62 total strikes, 61 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts, and Asu landed 40 total and significant while going 0 for 6 in takedown attempts. Manel Kape is becoming a very well-rounded fighter with the takedown defense. He is going to be a problem. Manel now extends his winning streak to 2. He is 3-1 since 2023. He stays at number 6 in the rankings. And Asu ends that 17-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He is 4-1 in the UFC and moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 9. So I would assume Manel is next in line for the flyweight championship after Kai Kara France. And for Asu, how about Tagir Ulanbekov? That fight should be up next. So again, somewhat of a lackluster card. The Nasrat Haparas Esteban Rabovic's fight stole the show. But regardless, we're set up back for pay-per-view UFC 313. I'll be catching this back on the way back from the ski hill. We have the early prelims at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, the prelims on ESPN at 5 p.m. Pacific, and then the main card ESPN pay-per-view at 7 p.m. Pacific. Now, I believe this main card is absolute box office. The prelims has some fun fights in store as well. There really isn't a bad fight on this card. I am previewing it an 8 out of 10. I'm hyped. A good fight we will not break down is the opening fight. We have Ozzy Diaz taking on Contender Series alum Jordan Santos. But we're going to kick this off in the early prelims. That newly made fight, we have Chris El Guapo Gutierrez, 33 years old with a 21-5-2 record, taking on John the Sexy Mexi Castaneda. He was supposed to fight Carlos Diego Ferreira, I believe, or De Andrade, but he got issues with weight cutting, so they pulled it, so he fights a week later. But John Castaneda is 21-7, 33 years old. And I do think this short notice matchup should be a doozy. Both men are in their primes at 33 years old. They both have something to prove in the UFC. And they really need to defend their spot where they're at in the division ladder board to have a crack at the top 15. A loss here in the middle of the prime puts you kind of in that deep prospect territory. But Chris has been there. John hasn't, although he's faced very good stiff competition. So now is his chance. Breaking this one down, Chris trains out of Factory X. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's a Bellator World Series of Fighting and LFA alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 2-2 since 2023, and 9 of his 21 wins are via knockout. John trains out of Bang Tao Muay Thai and MMA. He's a brown belt in BJJ. He's an RFA King of the Cage and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 8 of his 21 wins are via knockout, 6 via submission, so 14 of his 21 wins come via finish, and he does have a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, neither man has had a finish victory in the UFC since 2022, so I do expect a hard-fought back-and-forth striking battle. Chris is going to have to do more than just kick his opponents to death, so I do hope we see advancement in his boxing. But John is more of a well-rounded fighter and may look to take Chris down, so I am expecting him to edge out the rounds. It looks like John Castaneda live is plus minus in some books. Bet Online and Bovada has him as an underdog, some as a favorite. But we're going to say I'm taking the underdog. The dog's coming to eat. I'm taking John Sexy Mexi Castaneda, but I am not putting him on any parlays. Then we have Myron the Legend Santos, 24 years old with a 15-1 record, taking on Francis Fire Marshall, 25 years old with an 8-2 record. And this really is a clash of styles showdown between two young prospects. Myron bruised his way through the Ultimate Fighter with his power and precision striking, while Francis has had a fast route to the UFC since the Contender Series, but has had some very tough opponents and is continually evolving his striking while not being a grappling-dependent fighter. Breaking it down, Myron trains out of Extreme Couture. He's an LFA and Ultimate Fighter alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, 1-0 in the UFC, and 8 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Francis is a Ring of Combat and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-2 since 2023, and 4 of his 8 wins are via submission. Now, I was very impressed when Myron won the Ultimate Fighter, but his power and precision really was the things that stuck out. I don't think he's faced the level of competition that Francis has or is. Francis has already battled guys like Dennis Bazooka, who he defeated, Isaac Dolgarian and William Gomez, and lost very close split decisions. I do expect Francis to try and close distance quickly and wear on Santos. And although he was able to get through it against Guillermo Torres in the Ultimate Fighter, another very good grappler, I just feel like Francis is younger and quicker, and that's going to be tough to handle. Francis is plus 250 or higher underdogs on most sports books. So I'm taking another underdog. The dogs are coming to eat. Ho, ho. I'm taking Francis Marshall, but I am not putting him on any parlays where possible. Then going into the prelims, we have Alex the Great White Morano, 34 years old with a 24-11-1 record, taking on Carlos the Lion Leal, 30 years old with a 21-6 record. I'm actually a little shocked at how big the odds are favoring Carlos. Right now, he is like a minus 800 or better favorite. That's shocking to me. Alex is a slick and proven veteran who is tough to hit. And Alex has been with the UFC for 9 years and is still in his prime. He's in desperation mode to keep his spot on the roster. And he's still in his prime at 34, so his time really is now. Carlos made an impressive UFC debut showing against Renat Fakhretdinov, where many actually thought he won that fight. But this is one that I think is getting overlooked. Breaking it down, Alex is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a second-degree black belt in BJJ and a black belt in Taekwondo. He's a Legacy FC alum and former champion. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 2-3 since 2023. 7 of his 24 wins are via knockout, 6 via submission, so 13 of his 24 wins come via finish. Now, Carlos is a Bellator, LFA, and PFL alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 4-2 since 2023, and 10 of his 21 wins are via knockout. Now, Carlos really showed his kickboxing offense, but he definitely isn't the best defensive striker. If Alex can weather the early storm and let Carlos wear down, I have a weird feeling this fight could be very close, and Alex is going to have plenty of opportunities for big counter strikes, especially as the fight wears on. But Carlos should be the more powerful man and will be too much to overcome. For that reason, I'm taking Carlos Leal, but I am not putting him on parlays. I might actually sprinkle a little bit on Alex Morano just for the odds. Moving on, what a scrap we have here. The rest of the card is phenomenal. We have Bruno the Hulk Ferreira, 32 years old with a 12-2 record, taking on Armin Superman Petrosian, 34 years old with a 9-4 record. Now again, I'm excited for this fight. We got two men in their primes at 32 and 34. Arman, somewhat newer to the UFC, came at a little bit older age from kickboxing. He's a savvy striker. He's just been stuck in some bad spots. He was defeated against he was defeating Shara Magomedov until he got caught with that crazy wild highlight double spinning back fist. And he has showed weaknesses against good grapplers like he did in the Rodolfo fight. But overall, he's very good on his feet. And Bruno is a heavy-hitting brute force of a striker, and he's not much of a grappler. So stylistically, this should be a blast. Arman does a great job staying at kickboxing range in his fights, and I think he'll be much more of a technical fighter here. Breaking it down, Bruno is a Contender Series alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 3-2 since 2023. 9 of his 12 wins are via knockout. Now, Arman has a Muay Thai and kickboxing style. He's a Dana White Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2023. 6 of his 9 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 4 losses are via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. And he does have a 3-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Bruno is going to bring the fight to Arman early. And Arman is going to have to kick his way to keep the distance. I do think the longer the fight goes, the more it'll favor Arman with his style. Plus, I believe that Bruno is going to resort to grappling at some point, but he's not going to have success. I do see a world where Bruno lands a big shot in probably round 2, but I think that Arman is going to bring the fight where he wants it. For that reason, I'm taking Arman Petrosyan. I am putting him on my parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, we have Joshua the Fearless Van, 23 years old with a 12-2 record and the number 15 next to his name, taking on Ray Saruya, 22 years old with an undefeated 10-0 record. Now, I continue to bring this up with Joshua Van, but at only 23 years old, Van has been in some phenomenal slugfests, and he just continues to evolve and grow. Ray is even younger at 22, and he's really getting thrown in the deep end of the flyweight division as an undefeated prospect. Breaking this down, Joshua is a Fury FC alum and former champ. He has the highest significant strikes landed per minute in UFC history at 8.88. He also has the highest striking differential in UFC flyweight division history at 3.06. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is a very impressive 5-1 since 2023. And 6 of his 12 wins are via knockout. Now, Ray has a wrestling style. He's a Road to the UFC alum. He's undefeated on a 10-fight winning streak. He's 1-0 in the UFC. 4 of his 10 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, so 8 of his 10 via finish. And he has a 3-inch reach advantage. Those striking categories that Joshua is leading at 23 are honestly utterly insane. But this is a clash of style fight as Ray is going to look to take down Joshua, because if he doesn't, he's going to be in a world of hurt. Van has really improved his takedown defense throughout his UFC career and has done well against other grapplers such as Cody Durden and Zhalgas Zhumagulov. So I do expect him to keep the good vibes rolling here. For that reason, I'm taking Joshua Van. We're putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on, in the prelim headliner, we have Curtis Razor Blades, 34 years old with an 18-5-1 record and the number 5 next to his name, taking on Rizvan Kuniev, 31 years old with a 13-2-1 record. Now, I'm still not too sure why the UFC booked this fight for Curtis. Well, he's at the top of the division in his prime, but they must think highly of a man, which doesn't make sense, who they actually didn't even award a contract in his first Contender Series victory back in 2021. They made him come back and prove himself. Now, Curtis has done nothing wrong in the UFC, and he has very quality wins. So again, I'm not sure what he did to deserve this, but he's a company man. Breaking it down, Curtis trains out at Elevation Fight Team. He has a purple belt in BJJ. He has a JUCO wrestling background at a Harper College where he won the championship as a sophomore. He has the most takedowns landed in UFC heavyweight division history with 62. He has the most control time in UFC heavyweight division history at 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 6 seconds. And the most top position time in UFC heavyweight division history at 1 hour and 6 minutes. He has the most takedowns landed in a fight in UFC heavyweight history. He had 14 against Alexander Volkov. He's an RFA alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2023, but last fought for the interim UFC heavyweight championship. 13 of his 18 wins are via knockout, and all 5 of his losses are via knockout. Life in the heavyweight division, to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Curtis also has a 5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Rizvan is an Eagles FC Contender Series 2-time and PFL alum. 6 of his 21 wins are via knockout. He's on an 11-fight winning streak. He had a no contest in there, which he actually should have won, but he failed a drug test. So I do expect Curtis to wear on Rizvan and just bully him wherever this fight goes. Curtis should be the better grappler and striker, I really have no doubt. Rizvan's best moment has been a decision victory over Renan Ferreira in the PFL, and I don't really even know any of his other opponents. For that reason, I'm taking Curtis Blades. We're putting him on that parlay. We're marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on into the main card, we have Mauricio One-Shot Ruffy, 28 years old with an 11-1 record, taking on King Green, 38 years old with a 32-16-1 record. Now, Bobby has been taking on young fighters the past few years, and he's been fighting the best of the best in the lightweight division for some time. Mauricio has been thought very highly of since he's been in the UFC, but his last fight against James Yontop showed he has a ways to go, and he will be tested with the hand speed and willingness to scrap that King brings to a fight. Breaking it down, King trains out of Pinnacle MMA. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He has the most significant strikes landed in UFC lightweight division history at 1,860. The most total strikes landed in a UFC lightweight division history at 2,087. He's an Affliction, King of the Cage alum and former champion, as well as a Strikeforce alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak. He's 3-2-1 since 2023. 11 of his 32 wins are via knockout, 9 via submission, so 20 of his 32 wins are via finish, and 5 of his 16 losses are via knockout. He dies on his sword. Now, Mauricio trains out of the Fighting Nerds, the hottest team in UFC. He's a Contender Series alum. He's on a 6-fight winning streak, 4-0 in the UFC, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, this fight is actually a very fun one, but for me, a tough one to pick. I'm surprised Mauricio is a minus 425 or higher favorite on all the books. King is a savvy striker that will draw Mauricio in to try to counter him. Mauricio faded as the rounds wore on in his last outing back in November, just a few months ago. And if King gets out of the first round, this becomes a very, very interesting fight. I do think Mauricio is going to egg Green on to try to turn this into a brawl. King has taken a lot of damage in his fighting days and has been finished 4 times since 2022. I really think that's the difference here. Your chin gets worn down, and if Ruffy can find the mark, I expect him to get a finish. So I am taking Mauricio Ruffy, but I am not putting this on any parlays. I have a weird feeling Bobby Green's going to shock the world, although it's not a shock to me. Moving on, we have Yasmin Lucindo, 23 years old with a 17-5 record and the number 7 next to her name, taking on Amandinha Lemos, 37 years old with a 14-4-1 record and the number 5 next to her name. Now, Amanda's had some tough outings since her prime window, where she fought for the title only a year and a half ago. Yasmin is still so young and a raw striker, but I think she's faster and just about as powerful as Amanda, which is her best trait. Now, breaking it down, Yasmin is on a 4-fight winning streak. She's 4-1 in the UFC, and 8 of her 17 wins are via knockout. Amanda is a Jungle Fight alum. She's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2023. 8 of her 14 wins are via knockout, and 2 of her 4 losses are via submission. This fight is very similar for me to the King Green and Ruffy fight, because Amanda is in must-win territory if she wants to stay at top of the division. I just think Yasmin is going to wear her out and slowly pick her apart. There is definitely a world where Amanda brings her into a slugfest and gets her to gas out, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Yasmin even get some takedown attempts, because Amanda hasn't done well there. For that reason, I'm taking Yasmin Lucindo, but I am not putting this on any parlays. These are very, very close matched fights. Moving on, another absolute banger. We have Ignacio La Huala Bahamondes, 27 years old with a 16-5 record, taking on Jalen the Tarantula Turner, 29 years old with a 14-8 record and the number 13 next to his name. Now, Ignacio has continued to climb the rankings as he nears his prime at 27 years old, and now he gets his toughest test after 2 beautiful first-round finishes in 2024. Jalen has had some very close split decision losses and had to fend off grappling heavy fighters, but here he gets a very fun striking matchup. This potentially could be fight of the night. Breaking it down, Ignacio's last 2 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up, he's showing out. He's an Island Fights, Titan FC, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2023. 11 of his 16 wins are via knockout. Now, Jalen trains out of RVCA. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's a World Series of Fighting, Bellator, King of the Cage, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 1-3 since 2023. 10 of his 14 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission, so all 14 of his wins come via finish. And 4 of his 8 losses are via knockout, so to knock out or be knocked out. And he's a tarantula for a reason. Ignacio's long as well, but Jalen has a 4-inch leg reach advantage. Now, honestly, I'd be surprised if this went to the scorecards. Again, this might be fight of the night. This should be a pure, violent kickboxing showdown, a ton of fun. Both men are long with a good mix of power and speed. Jalen is hitting his prime now and has something to prove to fend off the younger talent in the division, and I think he's going to be able to pick Ignacio apart over the course of 15 minutes. Ignacio is going to look to close the distance, maybe tie Jalen up, wear on him against the cage. But I am taking Jalen Turner, who is pretty much even or plus money in some books, and I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the co-main event. One fun rematch we have here. We have Rafael Ataman Fiziev, 12-3 record, and the number 11 next to his name. He's 32 years old. Taking on Justin the Highlight Gaethje, 36 years old with a 26-5 record and the number 3 next to his name. Now, I was a big fan of the first fight, and since that fight, Justin has put on some brilliant performances against some of the best in the UFC. Rafael has struggled to get opponents since his last fight where he injured his knee, so he really hasn't had a chance to rebound. In the first fight, I picked Justin, and that obviously paid dividends. But I think Fiziev's youth and speed over the course of 3 rounds could be the difference here. Breaking it down, Rafael has a Muay Thai style. He trains out of Kill Cliff FC. He has a blue belt in BJJ, and he shows out, man. 6 of his last 7 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night He's a bonus machine and a fan favorite fighter. 8 of his 12 wins are via knockout, and 2 of his 3 losses are also via knockout. So again, to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Justin is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Team Onyx with Trevor Whitman. He has a D1 wrestling background out of Northern Colorado. He's the former interim UFC lightweight champion. He's also the UFC BMF. 10 of his last 12 UFC fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. They call him the highlight for a reason. He shows up, he shows out. He's their favorite fighter's favorite fighter. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 20 of his 25 wins are via knockout, and 3 of his 5 losses are via knockout. So again, to knock out or be knocked out. Now, this fight is the favorite to steal the show and get fight of the night. In the first fight, Justin was able to get more shots off and even got a takedown. If Justin were to go to the grappling well, and I say this every time, I'd think he'd have success, but again, I doubt he does that. I have a feeling Fiziev is going to be refreshed and just put so much volume in that he could steal the decision, but is going to have to deal with Justin's pressure and power. One hell of a doozy we have here, but I'm opting with the younger, fresher fighter and Ataman Fiziev, but I am not putting this on any parlays where possible. And then the much-awaited main event. We have Alex Poatan Pereira, 37 years old with a 12-2 record, taking on Magomed Ankalaev, 32 years old with a 21-1 record, and the number 1 next to his name. Now, we finally get this matchup. It seems like it's been dangling there forever, and we get to see how well Alex can do against a well-rounded fighter with very good grappling. Alex has really only fought one grappling-heavy fighter, and he's not truly a grappling-heavy fighter, but that was Jan Blachowicz back in 2023. I got to see that in person in Salt Lake City, where he fought a very close split decision, but has avoided the grapplers throughout his UFC career. Now, Magomed doesn't rely on his grappling, but he also has really good kickboxing, and he has won many fights without being reliant on getting takedowns. Breaking this one down, Alex has a kickboxing style. He's an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Teixeira MMA and Fitness. He has a black belt in BJJ and kickboxing. He has 3 successful title defenses and is the former UFC middleweight champion. He has the shortest time and fewest bouts to win championships in 2 divisions in UFC history. It was 736 days and 7 bouts. He has the shortest time for 3 consecutive title defenses in UFC history, 175 days. He's the first and only fighter to win the UFC middleweight and light heavyweight championships. He has the fewest MMA bouts to become a 2-division UFC champion in 11 bouts. He has the highest significant strike percentage in UFC light heavyweight division history at 67.2%. He had the latest knockout in a UFC middleweight title fight at 2 minutes and 1 second of round 5 against Israel Adesanya in their first fight. He holds wins over 5 former UFC champions, Izzy, Sean Strickland, Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prohaska, and Jamal Hill in his first 8 fights in the UFC. He's the 2024 Fighter of the Year, 2022 Breakout Fighter of the Year. 3 of his last 5 fights have been Performance of the Night or Fight of the Night. He shows up, he shows out. He was inducted into the 2023 Glory Kickboxing Hall of Fame, and his Glory resume is deep. He was the 2021 Light Heavyweight Champ, the 2019 Interim Light Heavyweight Champ, the 2017 Middleweight Champ with 5 title defenses, and the 2014 Glory Middleweight Contender Tournament winner. He had the 2017 Glory Fight of the Year against Izzy, the 2019 Knockout of the Year against Jason Willis. He's the 2015 WGP Kickboxing Champ. He's a Jungle Fight alum and former champion, an LFA alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak and is 5-1 since 23. As a champion with those accolades, 6 fights in 2 years is absolutely bonkers. We're about to make it 7 with half a year remaining. 10 of his 12 wins are via knockout, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, Magomed has a combat sambo style. He's an international master of sport in combat sambo. He won gold in the 2016 light heavyweight sambo championships. He's on an 11-fight winning streak. He had a no contest and a draw, but he's 2-0-1 since 2023, and 10 of his 19 wins are via knockout. Now, the Vegas odds think this is close as well, which is shocking. It's pretty much a -110, -110 fight across the board. But I truly think over the course of 5 rounds, Magomed is going to put Alex in some deep waters. But I can't bet against Alex after all he's done. Alex's striking is as good as anyone's, and his power is unworldly. I do believe there is a path to victory if Magomed mixes in grappling and is able to keep Alex down for a round or two to gas him out and take some oomph out of his power shots. For that reason, I can't pick against him. I'm taking Poatan Alex Pereira, but I am avoiding this on any parlays. This is the true test for Alex Pereira. Now, one hell of a pay-per-view, man. We have the Alex Pereira fight, anything can go, fight of the year potential. The Fiziev Gaethje rematch, we already know that's going to be a banger. Ignacio Bahamondes testing his abilities against Jalen Turner. Yasmin Lacindo getting a jump into the deep end. Mauricio Ruffy, is he that guy? In the prelims, Curtis Blades. Joshua Van against the undefeated Ray Saruya. I'm really excited about the Bruno Ferreira, Armin Petrosian fight. We'll see if Carlos Leal can take on the savvy veteran Alex Morano. The 2 prospects in Myron Santos and Francis Marshall. All those fights are must-see TV. UFC 313, I'm previewing an 8 out of 10. I have not done that since UFC 300 or 301. I can't wait. Now, the classic schedule of the UFC will be in store as next week we go from pay-per-view back to the Apex, 3rd consecutive week in Vegas. I do think the card has more to be desired. There are some decent fights, but the headliner is Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze 2, which I was not a fan of that matchmaking. But who cares? This weekend, that's what it's all about. I'll recap this next week after I hit the slopes and catch some spring training. I'm your host for episode 88, Shane Gillette, and I'll see you next week.